All right, so we're continuing with the red letter challenge. And we are on page 27. How fast does it take? Oop, no, that's not it. There it is, 27. Everyone should be on page 27 now. Is everyone on page 27? I just got resounding yeses from the front here. I heard a no from the back. I'm not pointing any fingers. but we're on day 27. It's the beginning of the week of giving, and I've actually been encouraged from hearing from people about this and kind of going through it, that like people are they tell me, they're like, hey, I've been able to give this up. I've been able to deal with this. And that's, as a pastor, like, is really encouraging to me. Because when we do one of these pre-packaged curriculum things, like, there's a lot of times when we don't know if it's going to work out. You know, like, it's like we start doing it and people are like, I don't know, this is kind of boring. Like it's over there. But it seems like people are enjoying it. So good deal. So let's keep it going. We got 2 more weeks left. And what the whole idea behind this is, we're looking at the red letters of Jesus, the red letter challenge, like seeing the things that Jesus said in the Gospels. And we end up finding out that Jesus is very generous and giving, and he is gracious and merciful and all those things. But people look at the church around, and oftentimes they're like, not so generous, more stingy, like not so gracious, more judgy, all those stuff. And so with this one, it's letting us look at the red letters of Jesus and giving us different targets to look at. Things like, and the 5 targets that we've been looking at through this are being, forgiving, serving, giving, and going. And so today, it's all about giving. And I know what you're saying. You're like, oh no, why did it come today? He tricked us with the Kevin thing. And he's talking about giving? Like what? What's like, why are we here today? Like, let's talk about all of that, because I think we have kind of an unhealthy relationship with money. And here's what I mean by that. In our culture today, financial stress is completely normal, right? Debt, completely normal. Living paycheck to paycheck, completely normal. Having those monthly payments, completely normal. Worry, anxiety, and fear, especially around maybe a slowed economy, normal, right? Having tensions in our relationships over money, normal. Like, all these things are just normal stuff that we consider every day. It's like, oh, that's just the way things are. Oh gosh, right? Like, maybe that isn't the way it should be. Maybe there's a better way to look at all of this stuff. Because I think what we do is oftentimes money becomes this place where we seek power and influence in it. And we give money that power and influence that it probably shouldn't have. And rather than using it as a tool, it becomes a thing of our salvation, right? Because we end up saying things like, oh, if I could just get this amount of money, then I'd be fine, right? It's always more than what you have now, right? But that's, if I could just get this, if this investment would work out, you know? Like that's, we end up saying that's fine. Well, the way I define that's fine, I think that's a salvation term, right? Because I think salvation is when we discover that we are fine, that we are good there. So I think the reason why it's not working is there's 3 things going on. The first one is we're not honest with ourselves. We're not honest with ourselves. We're actually pretty rich, right? We're actually pretty rich. I remember I was attending a Bible study that was happening here. None of the people at this Bible study are here anymore. I have a feeling it's because they didn't like me, but I don't know. Like all those things. But in the Bible study leader, he was reading something. I can't remember quite what it was, but they said that, you know, he's like, are you rich or poor? And he's like, are you rich? And I raised my hand. I went, yeah, I'm rich. And then they all looked at me with this glance of like, we're paying the pastor too much. Like he's getting a little too much right there. You know, it's like, oh, I'm rich. But the reason why I said I'm rich is because, I think a lot of us, we've view our wealth and we're in denial about it. Because some weird statistics are, if you make 40 grand a year, 40 grand, okay? 40 grand, you're the top 4% of wealth in the entire world. If you make $48,000, you're 1%. Think about that. Think about that. Think, like, at no other point in all of humanity have we been able to live with the level of luxury that we could drive our cars to the Taco Bell and experience a cheesy gordita crunch. A lot of you haven't experienced that. I can tell, like but it's true though. Like, we live with a level of luxury now that we don't really think about, and over there, so we're in kind of denial of that. Like this week, I found out that 10% of people that make over $100,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck. Right? Like they're in just in all of that, and it's like, oh man, like that struggle is like. I lived with my mother-in-law for a year and a half as we built our house. In that year and a half, I had all my stuff in a storage unit, all right? A storage unit. Now, I got to ask you guys to go back, right? So remember the 80s and early 90s? Were there storage unit places around? Some, but not really, right? Were they air conditioned? No, right? That's not over there. That storage industry that basically didn't exist 30 years ago is now larger than the U.S. music industry. Isn't that wild? Like, just our stuff just is pulled in there. And so I think we're in denial about money. Like, and it takes getting out of that. The next one is we're cynical about where our money's going to go. I think that's our next thing, is we're very cynical about it. And I think we and this comes from a good place, but the problem is when it kind of overtakes us. So like, it's like is that church or is that organization actually going to spend my money in a well? You always see this happening, like when a disaster happens and the Red Cross starts acting for money. People are like, oh, they just don't, there's too much overhead, part of the Red Cross, right? It's that whole thing, but that happens in churches too. And one of my favorite comedians is a comedian named John Oliver. He has a show on HBO. And in that show, he figured out that all these like TV preachers, like Robert Tilton and that whole ilk, that they are just making money after money after money, just over more. Like one of this guys, what's his name? I can't remember, but he said he doesn't fly a commercial. He flies only private. And did you guys hear why he only flies private? He says that there's demons that fly commercial. He's not wrong, but he's a servant of God, right? He should be able to handle it. Like that's over there. But like he's going out there. But these guys, all they are is on TV. And what this comedian and John Oliver, what he said, he said, I want to show you how easy it is to create a religious nonprofit. So he made one, and he called it Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. which I thought was hilarious. I was like, that's the funniest thing I've seen in a long time. And look at what he's wearing. It's the most perfect thing. Like and you can go to their website and you can give them money right now. I'll go there. It won't be going to anything, but that was kind of his point, right? We are cynical about where we're going because we're worried about shysters like this guy. And the TV preachers, right? We're cynical about all that. And then the third one is money, I think, is our number one idol in our lives. And I think it gives us power and prestige. And that's kind of connected to that whole idea of cynicism too. There's an Instagram account called Preachers and Sneakers. Have you guys ever heard of Instagram before? Like that, you like that, right? Preachers and Sneakers. It's this great Instagram account, and what it does is it shows, and these are good servants of the Lord. They're good people. They're not trying to make fun of the church. They're just kind of showing a wrinkle that's not the most healthy, possibly, just kind of starting conversation. But they show these big preachers, and then they show how much their shoes cost that they're wearing. So this first guy with the gray coat on here, he's wearing a pair of shoes that's worth $3,700. right? The guy over in the gray hoodie, he's wearing a pair of shoes that's $1,000. Like you look over there like, oh my goodness, right? And the Instagram account's going like, yeah, it's not the best look, fellas. It's not the best look. But sometimes we convince ourselves that the true power and authority is our money, right? Like I remember the big thing that just blew my mind over the pandemic here constantly was all this conversations you would hear about, I don't know if we should worry about all the lives we're losing. We got to make sure that economy keeps going. I'm like, oh, that sounds disgusting. Like, come on, they got virtually no fallout from it, because we understand. Like, yeah, we got to keep those things open. It doesn't matter what happens, right? Like that's because we view money as like a source of power, and we see this all over the place. So let's get into the Bible. Let's get into the Bible and talk about these things, because this is a couple cool verses here that I want to talk about. Now, Jan, I want you to notice something from the reading today. My reading was a lot less than yours today. That was on purpose. that was on purpose. That was on purpose. The reason why is that I would actually want the reading to be all of Luke chapter 19, chapter 20, and 21. Because those three chapters are all about pretty much the same thing: money, power, and authority. Like it's about those things. And he's just building this argument on there. So we're going to hit kind of the highlights, but when you get home, I encourage you to read those three chapters. I'm sure the book is also going to have you read some of those as well. But let's start at the beginning of chapter 20, right? Luke chapter 20, right at the beginning, it says, one day as Jesus was teaching the temple, as Jesus was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel. All right, let's check some biblical knowledge in the room. I wasn't expecting anyone to get this in the first service, and someone got it. Let's see if you guys win this competition too, or if you lose. All right, what is going on right before this? Does anyone know? One day as Jesus was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel, does anyone know what happened right before this? Baptism? No. Kyler, you know because you were here. Like that. Yell it out, Kyler, yell it out. Yeah, it's the flipping of the tables. Like, so Jesus walked into the temple and he's like, well, you've made my Father's house into a den of sin, right? It's like the Publix in Verano. And like they start tipping over all of the tables of all the money changers and all that stuff. Do you think the Pharisees, who are getting a cutback from all of that, are happy about any of that? No, not at all. So let that color. That's the sentences before this one, right? That's the sentences. So one day as Jesus was teaching in the temple, teaching the people in the temple, notice Jesus didn't like turn over a bunch of tables and then run into the wilderness like laughing gleefully, right? He didn't do that. He's still around. He's standing there over there. So he's preaching the gospel, and the chief priests and the scribes with the elders come up to him and they say, tell us by what authority you're doing these things, or who is it that gave you that authority? What are they upset about? They're losing power. And they're like, by what power are you doing this, Jesus? Like, what's going on with you? Like, he's affecting their money stream, their power stream, right? He's affecting their glory and all that stuff. They're like, we can't retire as well. We need that Bentley chariot, right? Like they're looking for all of this. And so they're questioning him on there. And this whole chapter 19 and 20 and 21 is all talking about this. So let's just outline what's going on. First, they're questioning his authority. They first try to trick him. Okay, they're trying to trick Jesus. The next story is all about paying taxes. BTW, Jesus thinks you should pay taxes. If you're listening to anybody that's telling you in your ear that you shouldn't pay your taxes, I would say that's anti-Jesus. That's the devil. Don't listen to him, right? So then they're talking about people that are trying to get out of taking care of their families. It's money and power issues, right? Money, faith, and power keeps on getting talked about right up until we get to what I read earlier, right here. And this is it. Right at the end of chapter 20. In the hearing of all the people, he said to his disciples, beware of all the scribes and the Pharisees. Now, I love how Luke authors this page, because look at what he does. He's like, in the hearing of all the people. All right, I grew up in the South, right? In the South has a phrase that not many other cultures have, right? And that's like, does anyone know what I'm guessing at? Bless your heart, right? Bless your heart. Boy, my heart was blessed a lot when I was growing up, right? Because it's exactly what's going on here. Because how is it normally said? It's said like you'll have all of you Southern mothers. Listen, I know who it is, right? It's all you guys sitting around, and you'll be talking about me or someone else, and you'll say it to the group. But you say it loudly, like, oh, bless his heart, he just doesn't know what he's talking about, right? Like that. It's over there. Like you're saying it just for the group there, but you're saying it loud enough for everyone to hear. It's like, oh, bless his heart, right? Like over there. That's what Jesus is doing here. He's like pulling all of his disciples together, and he doesn't just like huddle. It's like, beware of the scribes and Pharisees. No, he's like, come guys, let me tell you a secret. Beware of the scribes and the Pharisees, right? Who walk around in flowing robes. Oh, man. All right. And so they walk around in robes, and they love the greetings in the marketplaces. Gosh, this feels like an attack. And the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at the feast, who devour widows' homes and houses, and for pretense make long prayers. In confirmation, we went over Mark, and this last year, it has the same little bit in it, and I made them sit on this thing. What does that mean? To devour widows' homes. What does that mean? Like it makes me think of those TV preachers, right? The ones that they're like, just put your hand on the TV with me and send me all this money so we can keep the ministry of Jesus going, right? Or it reminds me of politicians who go, the world is going to collapse unless you send me this amount of money so that my election can keep on going, right? So it reminds me of anytime anyone uses fear to motivate, maybe selling a security system, maybe selling this, selling that. The scammers that tried to scam my grandparents by saying that I was captured by someone in another country. If you get a call like that, it's a scam. If you ever think you're being scammed, you can call me at any time of the day. I will tell you if it's real or not. It's probably a scam. Okay? But like they devour widows' homes. They devour people over there. It reminds me of when people will claim, it's like, oh, we just need free market solutions to stuff, but then you have payday loan places all over the streets devouring widows' homes. Right? Like it's over these places, like, oh, I'm just honored in places, and oh, looking great, and I got so much power, and everything I'm doing is just destroying those in need. They will receive greater condemnation. What do the people say about the church? They say what that comedian says. Like, why are they tax exempt? What benefit are they being in the community around them? That's what tax exempt status is for. Like, why? This is an active conversation that is happening all around us right now. We have the world looking at us going, what's your worth? That's a hard thing to ask, right? That's a hard thing to deal with. And that's what we're looking at. And we're seeing that these Pharisees in these robes, they're doing the same thing. This is all getting talked about. And we have preachers of ours who are wearing fancy shoes. I think I've spent at least $60 on these, right? Don't worry, I spend my money frivolously on other things. Like Universal tickets, right? Thursday, you can't find me. Actually, you can. You'll know where I am, but you got to spend your money frivolously too. But it comes at the abuse of the power of. It comes at the abuse of the powerless, of these widows. And so the very next verse here is the next chapter. It says, "And Jesus looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box. And you can just picture this. Now, I'm an 80s model, right? I'm an 80s kid. Like we're kind of done putting like loud money into offering plates and stuff like that. For those of you that are of a older generation, like I'm sure that was probably a thing. Like we have felt bottom offering plates now to keep from some people. It passes over dear George McDonald, right? And when he dumps it in, it's like clink, 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 clink. It's like getting a jackpot, in Vegas, right? Just clink, and it just fills it. And you can almost picture that in here as the rich are coming up to this tithing box, at the temple, and you can just hear them dumping their sack of change, and there's and everyone can hear it around it. And then he says, and he saw a poor widow come in, and she put 2 small copper coins, which probably didn't even make a sound, right? And he said, truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put more in than all of them, for they contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty put in all she had to live on. The very next verse after this is the disciples are like, look at how amazing the temple is, Jesus. Look at how unreal this is. And Jesus goes, guys, it's all going to be torn down. It's all going to be torn down. And in 3 days, it's going to be built again. So in 3 days, it's going to be built again. And what I think Jesus is saying, he's trying to get us to look at our wealth and our money in a different way. And he says that if you try to put it in barns, if you try to save it all you can, like if that becomes your salvation, if I can just get a little bit more, I'll be just that much better. If all those things, it's at risk of all collapsing down. And in fact, Jesus says that when he says that he's going to be rebuilt in 3 days, we know what he's talking about. We know it's his crucifixion. That he took all that greed, all that power that we wanted our money to give us. He took all of that and he took it to the grave. He took it to the grave where he rose again, bringing liberation to us all. What he's trying to show us is that there's a better way. And I think the root of our giving is realizing that there is a better way. That we don't have to look for power, control, and salvation in the money around us, that we're able to not see it in the next thing that we're giving ourselves, but we're able to give away from there. And I think a good verse that shows this is John 3:16. That says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him would not perish but have eternal life. God gave his only son, that he gives us back. So here's what I want to talk about at the end. I was trying to come up with a way of showing this, and this is why. We just did this incredible project with Alzheimer's Community Care. And by the way, like we have in Kevin Garber's Day, I called Mary Barnes on Tuesday, who is the CEO of Alzheimer's Community Care. I said, hey, we're doing Kevin Garber's Day. I just thought you should know. Like that's it. And she and Mike, which is her right hand, showed up today, if you guys didn't see her. The CEO of this company that is so much bigger than we are, so much more powerful than we are, right? Like, it's just what a kind spirit, Like, I was blown away by that. But think about that building we did out there, and we had so many conversations about what to call that building. Should we name it after somebody? And we kept coming back to this principle. We kept coming back to we don't really want to name it after anyone, because normally you name it after somebody who just gives just copious amounts of money to something. Right? You just tons of money to it and all that. And we would have conversations. We're like, well, how does that honor this person? Because you know there are people in this church that they gave $50, $100. And because they gave that $50 to $100 to that project out there, that they had to make food choices differently than they would have if they'd given that or not. They gave so much of their wealth that they had to the people around them. And if we slap someone else's name on it, I think we'd be dishonoring that gift that came from the heart. That gift of, it seems so insignificant by the world's standards, but we know that when we as the body of Christ work together with those gifts and the larger ones and all those things, that those gifts will have legs on. We signed a 30-year lease with these people. There will be people who are my age right now who are at the end of their lives receiving care from that facility because of somebody's heartfelt $50 gift. We have no idea where the legs of our giving will take us. But we know that God always blesses them and sends them out here. So thank you so much for all your gifts and for your generosity, that we may have the same spirit as Christ, that we may go out from here giving life in his name to all. And I think that's good news. Let's say a prayer. Jesus, we thank you that you love us so much and that you are with us. Continue to guide us, Lord, and that you would continue to lead us along your paths. Lord, help us to not seek power and prestige in our money, but see that your salvation is a way that we can bring blessings to the world around us. Thank you, Jesus.